Captain Jake Sullivan is flying over the Peruvian Andes when sudden engine failure forces him toward the ancient ruins of Machu Picchu. But among his passengers are married archaeologists, Dr. Isabella and Dr. Marcus Chen, who haven't spoken to each other in 6 months, despite living in the same house, because a professional disagreement about an ancient Incan love legend has destroyed their marriage. What happened next will prove that some love stories are thousands of years old, and that the ancient Incas knew more about fixing broken relationships than any modern marriage counselor ever could stay until the end. Because this story will show you that sometimes you have to crash land in the ruins of an ancient civilization to remember why you fell in love in the first place. Captain Jake Sullivan had flown missions in some of the world's most challenging conditions during his military career, but navigating the unpredictable air currents around the Peruvian Andes while carrying a small group of archaeologists to Machu Picchu was testing his skills in ways he hadn't anticipated, as his twin-engine aircraft began experiencing engine problems over some of the most remote and rugged terrain in South America. Among his 8 passengers were Dr. Isabella Chen and Dr. Marcus Chen, a married couple of renowned archaeologists who were traveling to Machu Picchu to present competing theories about an ancient Incan love legend at an international conference, despite the fact that they had barely spoken to each other in 6 months after their professional disagreement had destroyed their personal relationship. Isabella and Marcus had met 12 years earlier at Cambridge University, where they were both completing their doctorates in pre-Columbian archaeology, creating an instant connection between two people who shared not just professional interests, but also a deep passion for understanding how ancient civilizations approached love, marriage, and human relationships. Their 10-year marriage had been a partnership of equals as they co-authored groundbreaking papers about Incan culture, led joint excavations at archaeological sites throughout Peru, and built reputations as the field's leading experts on ancient South American civilizations, while also raising their daughter Sophia, who was now 8 years old and staying with her grandmother during this research trip. The conflict that had destroyed their relationship began 6 months earlier, when Isabella discovered evidence suggesting that an ancient Incan love legend they had been studying together for 5 years might have a completely different interpretation than what Marcus had published in his controversial book about pre-Columbian marriage customs. The legend involved 2 Incan lovers from rival families who had defied their communities to be together, eventually inspiring a cultural shift that changed how the Inca approached arranged marriages and family alliances. But Isabella's new evidence suggested the story had been misinterpreted by modern scholars, including her husband, whose entire career-defining book might be based on flawed assumptions. Marcus had taken Isabella's challenge to his research as both a professional attack and a personal betrayal, refusing to consider that his interpretation might be wrong, while Isabella felt that her husband was prioritizing his ego and reputation over scientific truth, creating a divide between them that had only widened over the following months. Their once warm and affectionate relationship had devolved into cold professional courtesy as they continued to live in the same house, sleep in separate rooms, and communicate only about practical matters related to their daughter, while their colleagues in the archaeological community watched in dismay as one of the field's most successful partnerships imploded. Jake noticed the tension between the 2 archaeologists during boarding as they deliberately sat in different rows and avoided eye contact with each other, while their research assistants exchanged uncomfortable glances about the ongoing conflict that everyone in their field knew about, but nobody could resolve. The other passengers included Dr. Sarah Martinez, a cultural anthropologist studying modern Quechua communities, photographer James Wilson, documenting archaeological sites, and 4 graduate students who were assisting with the conference, while also serving as uncomfortable witnesses to the Chen marriage's very public deterioration. The flight was supposed to be a routine charter from Cusco to a small airstrip near Machu Picchu, where the conference was being held at a research facility adjacent to the famous ruins, but Jake's aircraft was about to experience mechanical failures that would strand all of them in one of the world's most iconic archaeological sites. Isabella was reviewing her presentation notes, which directly contradicted Marcus's published theories about the Incan love legend, while Marcus was on his laptop preparing his own presentation that defended his original interpretation and dismissed Isabella's new evidence as circumstantial and incorrectly analyzed. The professional conference they were traveling to attend had become a proxy battlefield for their marriage, with colleagues placing bets on whose interpretation would prevail, and whether their relationship could survive what was being called the most acrimonious academic dispute in archaeological history. Jake checked his instruments and noticed the first signs of engine trouble as oil pressure began dropping while flying over a particularly remote section of the Andes with limited options for emergency landing sites anywhere below, except for the ancient terraces of Machu Picchu itself. The irony was overwhelming as Jake realized he might have to attempt an emergency landing at the very site where these two feuding archaeologists had first worked together as young doctoral students, and where they had discovered their shared passion for both ancient Incan culture and each other. Isabella looked out her window at the approaching ruins of Machu Picchu and felt tears forming as she remembered the first time she and Marcus had visited this site together when they were young and in love, before professional success and academic ego had destroyed what they had built together. Marcus glanced across the aisle at Isabella and felt a wave of regret about how their disagreement had escalated into something that threatened not just their professional partnership, but also their family and the life they had created together over the past 12 years. Jake's military training kicked in as he assessed the emergency and realized that the ancient agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu might provide the only possible landing surface within gliding distance, though attempting to land an aircraft at a UNESCO World Heritage Site would either make him a hero or get him arrested, depending on how successfully he could execute the impossible maneuver. The engine problems escalated rapidly as both engines began losing power, forcing Jake to declare an emergency while also trying to calculate whether he could reach the ruins before his aircraft became a powerless glider over some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. Isabella and Marcus both looked up from their competing presentations as Jake announced the emergency and realized with shock that they might die together in the ancient ruins where their love story had begun, never having resolved the conflict that had destroyed their marriage in its final years. Jake Sullivan's emergency approach to Machu Picchu required every ounce of his military flight training as he navigated between mountain peaks and ancient stone structures while fighting to maintain control of an aircraft that was rapidly losing power over one of the world's most famous and fragile archaeological sites. The Peruvian authorities and park rangers at Machu Picchu received Jake's emergency call with a mixture of concern and disbelief as they began evacuating the hundreds of tourists who were exploring the ancient ruins, completely unaware that an aircraft was about to attempt an unprecedented emergency landing on the agricultural terraces that had been built by Incan engineers over 500 years ago. Isabella and Marcus instinctively reached for each other's hands as the aircraft descended toward the ruins, experiencing a moment of connection and shared fear that reminded them of why they had fallen in love, before professional ego and academic competition had torn them apart. Jake identified a series of ancient agricultural terraces on the lower levels of Machu Picchu that might be long and flat enough to accommodate his aircraft, though landing on structures that were both sacred cultural heritage sites and extremely uneven stone platforms would be the most challenging maneuver of his flying career. The other passengers remained remarkably calm as Dr. Sarah Martinez led them through emergency procedures while photographer James Wilson captured what he assumed would be either incredible documentation of a miraculous landing or final moments before a tragic crash. Marcus looked at Isabella with tears in his eyes and told her that if they were going to die in the next few minutes, he needed her to know that she had been right about the Incan love legend, and that his pride had prevented him from admitting that her research was better than his. Isabella squeezed Marcus' hand and responded that his interpretation had been brilliant and that she had been so focused on being right that she had forgotten they were supposed to be partners who supported each other rather than competitors who destroyed each other. Jake brought the aircraft down on the ancient terraces at Machu Picchu, in a landing that would later be called either the greatest feat of emergency aviation or the most controversial archaeological site violation in Peruvian history, as the plane touched down on stone structures that had stood for half a millennium. The aircraft rolled to a stop just meters from the iconic Intihuatana stone, the ancient Incan astronomical device that had survived earthquakes and Spanish conquest but had never before been approached by modern aircraft, creating a surreal juxtaposition of ancient and contemporary technology. Emergency responders and park rangers rushed to the aircraft, while tourists who had been evacuated from the site watched in amazement from safe distances as Jake ensured all 8 passengers evacuated safely from the plane that was now resting on ancient Incan agricultural terraces. Isabella and Marcus climbed out of the aircraft still holding hands and found themselves standing in the exact spot where they had first kissed. 12 years earlier, when they were young doctoral students working on their first major excavation at Machu Picchu. Dr. Sarah Martinez observed the reunion between Isabella and Marcus and commented that it seemed appropriate, that a near-death experience in an ancient city dedicated to cosmic harmony had finally broken through the barriers that modern academic ego had constructed between them. The Peruvian archaeological authorities arrived on site faced with an unprecedented situation, as they had an aircraft resting on ancient terraces while also witnessing what appeared to be a significant emotional reconciliation between 2 of the world's leading Incan scholars. Jake coordinated with local authorities while also observing the transformation happening between Isabella and Marcus as they walked through the ruins hand in hand, rediscovering the connection they had shared before professional competition had poisoned their relationship. The ancient Incan love legend that had destroyed their marriage suddenly took on new meaning as Isabella and Marcus stood among the ruins, discussing how the original lovers in the story had prioritized their relationship over family pride and social expectations, just as Isabella and Marcus needed to prioritize their marriage over academic egos. Marcus admitted that Isabella's new evidence completely changed the interpretation of the legend and that, together, they could write a collaborative paper that would represent breakthrough research far more important than defending his outdated book. Isabella acknowledged that Marcus' original insights had been crucial foundation work, and that her new discoveries only made sense in the context of his earlier research, demonstrating that their partnership had always been stronger than either of them, working independently. The other passengers and research assistants watched in amazement as the archaeological community's most famous feuding couple reconciled in the ancient ruins while standing next to an aircraft that shouldn't have been able to land there but somehow had. James Wilson captured photographs of Isabella and Marcus, his reunion with Machu Picchu in the background, creating images that would later symbolize how ancient wisdom about love and partnership could heal even the most damaged modern relationships. Dr. Sarah Martinez commented that the Incan engineers who built these terraces probably never imagined they would one day save lives by providing an emergency landing strip, while also serving as the setting for marriage reconciliation. Jake reflected on how his emergency landing had not only saved lives, but had also somehow facilitated the healing of a broken marriage, suggesting that sometimes crisis situations create the conditions for people to remember what truly matters beyond ego and pride. The graduate students who had been uncomfortable witnesses to Isabella and Marcus's conflict for months were overjoyed to see their mentors reconnecting, and remembered why they had wanted to study under this legendary archaeological couple in the first place. The conference that Isabella and Marcus had been traveling to attend was cancelled as authorities dealt with the unprecedented situation of an aircraft at Machu Picchu, but the reconciliation that occurred among the ancient ruins proved far more valuable than any academic presentation could have been. The hours following Jake Sullivan's emergency landing at Machu Picchu became a profound lesson in how ancient wisdom about love and partnership could inform modern relationships as Isabella and Marcus Chen spent the rest of the day walking through the ruins where their love story had begun rediscovering why they had chosen each other. The Peruvian authorities faced the complex challenge of removing an aircraft from a UNESCO World Heritage site, while also recognizing that Jake's emergency landing had saved 8 lives and had been executed with such precision that no damage had been done to the ancient structures. Isabella and Marcus sat together at the temple of the sun, the sacred Incan, structure where they had first discussed the ancient love legend that would later nearly destroy their marriage, and began collaborating on a new interpretation that synthesized both their theories into something far more profound than either had developed independently. The reconciliation between two of archaeology's most prominent scholars became international news as colleagues around the world expressed relief that the field's most bitter academic dispute had been resolved through a combination of near-death experience and the wisdom of ancient Incan culture about prioritizing love over pride. Jake was initially concerned about potential legal consequences for landing at a protected archaeological Matar site, but the Peruvian government recognized him as a hero who had saved lives while also inadvertently facilitating an important cultural moment that demonstrated the continued relevance of ancient Incan wisdom. Isabella and Marcus called their daughter, Sophia, via satellite phone to tell her that everything was okay and that Mommy and Daddy had remembered why they loved each other while also promising that their family would heal and that they would never again let professional disagreements destroy their personal relationship. The collaborative research paper that Isabella and Marcus began writing during their time stranded at Machu Picchu would later be celebrated as groundbreaking work that revolutionized understanding of Incan approaches to marriage and partnership, while also serving as a testament to what couples can achieve when they choose collaboration over competition. Dr. Sarah Martinez documented the entire experience for an anthropological paper about how crisis, situations, and connection to ancient cultural sites can facilitate relationship healing in ways that modern marriage counseling often cannot accomplish. Photographer James Wilson's images of Isabella and Marcus reuniting at Machu Picchu with Jake's aircraft in the background became iconic. Representations of how ancient wisdom remains relevant for solving contemporary relationship challenges. The graduate students who witnessed their mentors' reconciliation learned valuable lessons about the importance of maintaining personal relationships even when professional. Disagreements arise, and about how true partnership requires setting aside ego in favor of mutual support and collaboration. Jake's aircraft was eventually removed from Machu Picchu using a specialized helicopter lift that transported it piece by piece back to Cusco, where it would be reassembled and returned to service, though Jake himself became a minor celebrity in Peru as the pilot who had brought two famous archaeologists back together. Isabella and Marcus abandoned their competing conference presentations and instead delivered a joint keynote address via video conference from Machu Picchu about how their personal reconciliation had led to breakthrough collaborative research that neither could have achieved independently. The couple established a research foundation dedicated to studying how ancient cultural wisdom about relationships could inform modern marriage counseling and conflict resolution, demonstrating that traditional societies often understood human partnership better than contemporary approaches. Their marriage counselor back in Cambridge, who had been working with them for months without success, sent a message saying that apparently what they needed wasn't therapy, but rather an emergency, landing at an ancient archaeological site to remember their priorities. Isabella and Marcus renewed their wedding vows at Machu Picchu 6 months later in a ceremony attended by colleagues from around the world, with Jake serving as an honored guest who had literally brought them back to where their love had begun. The ancient Incan love legend that had nearly destroyed their marriage became the centerpiece of their renewed relationship as they learned to embody the principles that the original story taught about choosing love over pride and partnership over individual achievement. Their daughter Sophia visited Machu Picchu with them and learned about how her parents had almost lost each other, but had been saved by both a skilled pilot and the enduring wisdom of a civilization that had understood the importance of love and family over personal ego. Jake continued his charter flying career, but maintained friendships with all the passengers from that extraordinary flight, while also developing a deep appreciation for how ancient sites like Machu Picchu continued to teach modern people about what truly matters in life. The conference that had been cancelled due to the emergency landing was eventually held with Isabella and Marcus as featured speakers presenting their collaborative research that demonstrated how personal reconciliation had led to professional breakthroughs. Today, Isabella and Marcus Chen continue their archaeological work as equal partners who have learned that their greatest discoveries come from collaboration rather than competition, and that the ancient Incas understood something profound about how love requires setting aside ego. Machu Picchu features a small plaque commemorating Jake Sullivan's emergency landing and the unlikely marriage reconciliation that occurred among the ruins, reminding visitors that ancient sites continue to teach us about human relationships and the importance of choosing love over pride. Their story inspired countless couples in academia and beyond to reconsider how professional competition was affecting their personal relationships and to remember that partnership means supporting each other rather than competing for individual glory. The annual pilgrimage that Isabella and Marcus make to Machu Picchu with their daughter has become a family tradition that honors both the ancient Incan wisdom that saved their marriage and the skilled pilot who brought them back to the place where their love story had begun and where it was ultimately saved. Isabella and Marcus Chen's incredible story proves that sometimes we need to be reminded by ancient civilizations that partnership and love are more important than individual achievement, and that the wisdom of cultures thousands of years old can teach us more about relationships than any modern approach. Their reconciliation among the ruins of Machu Picchu shows us that professional success means nothing if we destroy our personal relationships in pursuit of being right, and that true partnership requires choosing collaboration over competition, even when our egos want to prove ourselves superior. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever let professional disagreements or the need to be right damage an important personal relationship? Do you think Isabella and Marcus's reconciliation would have happened without the near-death experience? Or did they need that dramatic wake-up call to remember their priorities? Would you have been able to admit you were wrong about something that defined your professional identity? Or would pride have prevented you from reconciling even after a crisis? What do you think ancient civilizations understood about love and partnership that modern people have forgotten in our competitive, individualistic culture? Have you ever visited an ancient site like Machu Picchu and felt that historical places have wisdom to teach us about contemporary problems? Share your thoughts about balancing professional ambition with personal relationships and whether we've lost something important by prioritizing individual achievement over partnership and collaboration. Let me know in the comments. If this story inspires you to reconsider any relationships you've damaged through competition or the need to be right, don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories with Captain Jake Sullivan that prove ancient wisdom remains relevant for modern challenges and that sometimes we need to crash land among ruins to remember what really matters and hit that notification bell, so you never miss these amazing tales that show us how the past can teach us to build better futures when we're willing to learn from cultures that understood love and partnership better than we do today.